we have made a PowerPoint. This is every single event inspired to. And we're going to talk about when to click what, and usually what option is better. So this is going to cover all the different acts, as well as the events that are shared between acts at the end. Act 1A, Overgrowth. First thing is Aroma of Chaos. Your first option is to transform. Second option is to maintain control. I think this is pretty simple. For the most part, you just transform probably a strike, like 90% of runs. If you have a really important upgrade, you can go ahead and do that. So if this is like right before an elite or something and you need guaranteed value, then go ahead and upgrade. For the most part, transforms are just stronger than upgrades. So yeah, I would say like 90% you're probably just clicking the transform here. But there are a few use cases for upgrade, especially also if your upgrade is just sort of like, you know, very, very critical to the deck's success, or you already have a lot of direction in the deck and you don't really need the transforms. But transforms just give you solutions to a lot of problems that just sort of sit in your deck. So yeah, not much to talk about here. Predonis Nest. This is a really funny event because you get the egg and you have to hatch it at the rest site. But unfortunately, this option is just very bad. It eats your upgrade at the rest site as well. Like you have to click an actual button. So you can't do this for free. And then I'm basically just adding the random attack card into my deck that's just 14 damage, which is a big number. But for the most part, I feel like there's a lot of better ways to get something like this. I think most of the time you're just taking the max HP unless you're incredibly desperate. So again, unfortunately, an event that I think most of the time the answer is just one thing. The last event I like a lot more than this one, though. It feels like I almost never click the second one. Okay, Dense Vegetation. This is an event that has been slightly changed on the beta branch, and we're not sure if this will make it into the actual release. So we've included the beta branch changes, but it's not for sure if it's going to happen. So right now it says remove a card from deck, lose HP. The beta branch version says lose HP, gain some gold. I think they did this to kind of stop people from just forcing a bunch of removes and going infinite. Although, if you do take the rest here, this is 25 HP and you fight 4 of the guys that spawn from the frog parasite. And you get regular combat rewards. So, if the gold is not relevant to you, I think you're probably taking this heal. I think overall, this is a very, very good event. I like it when you have decisions like this, but I do think overall, like 25 HP is just worth more than the gold here. Unless there's some really important threshold for you going into the store. Although, I'm not really sure what that is now. Like, it doesn't feel super meaningful to walk in with like 250 gold versus like 180 or 190. Like it lets you buy a relic, but 25 HP is a lot. And you also get the card and potions. Most of the time you're probably just clicking the bottom option, except for very specific circumstances, regardless of whether it's the remove or the gold, I think. But yeah, good event. Jungle Maze Adventure. It's not that exciting. If you can afford to lose the HP, you can do it. But overall, again, I think we just talked about how the 18 HP is worth a lot. So unless you can really have HP to spend, you probably just click the bottom. 100 gold for 18 HP is not really all that worth it. It seems like a very steep price to pay. So yeah, probably the bottom one. If you're really strong, you can click top. If you're going right into a store or whatever, there's a lot of fires. There are sometimes you're going to click the top one, but most of the time click the bottom. Luminous Choir. Okay, so basically when it's formatted like this, there's an option at the bottom that says locked here. This option, so the second option, is not clickable at all unless you have 149 gold. So you're forced into the top one, I believe. The top option just says remove 2, add Spore Mine to your deck, which is just a curse that says exhaust on it for 1. So overall, this really just reads 2 removes with a little bit of extra work. If you're going infinite, sort of small deck style thing, you will just pay the 1 energy to exhaust this thing and not actually remove it from the deck. But yeah, definitely one of the better curses because you can just manually get rid of it. If you're not doing that, you can take the remove and then just remove the curse after, which is not all that bad. It would basically just read 1 remove. Still really strong. You can basically imagine that every time you draw Spore Mine, you're trading it for a strike draw, which usually strike is not that impactful. Depending on how early you see this, however, it can be better to just take the relic here, especially if you don't have a shop to actually spend your gold. So can depend. Overall, probably clicking removes here, just higher value and doesn't cost your gold, but not terrible to click the other one either. Morphic Grove. Lose 100 gold, transform 2 is crazy. In Spire 1, we had an event very similar to this. Transforms are, again, one of the strongest things you can do. You're basically removing a card and just adding random stuff into your deck. But any combo pieces that rely on having a second card to be really pickable somehow just end up in your deck now, and then you can pick the combo pieces. And this game is really designed, currently at least, like that. I feel like transforms are just better than ever. So I almost always slam 100 gold no matter what. You just cannot get this event without 100 gold, so you probably are spending that. I don't imagine that there's anything in the shop you can really buy for 100 gold that's worth more than this. Transforms, again, just insanely strong, so 99% of the time slamming top option here. On 0.1 patch, you lose all your gold to transform 2 cards, which could be more than 100, but is also very likely going to be less than 100 as well. So this could be a buff or a nerf depending on how you look at it. Either way, I think transforming 2 is probably one of the best things you can possibly do with your money anyways, and we sort of know this. Transformers are just incredibly powerful, so even if this costs like 250 gold, I'm still thinking about it. Unless maybe you have an elite coming up and there's a shop like next node or something, and you need to buy a potion to survive, and the transforms aren't a guaranteed way of living, but transforms in general, just super strong. Sapphire Seed. Heal 9 HP, upgrade a card in your deck, or enchant a card with Sown. Bottom left, the Sown says, the first time you play this card each combat, gain 1 energy. In general, I think these sorts of enchantments are just really strong. I don't think this one's particularly insane. It's 1 energy. So if you have like some very important power or a card that you really don't want to miss playing in the first deck cycle, it should go on this. Overall, the top option is also just very strong. 9 HP and upgrading a card often can also be energy cheat as well. So it could be that, and then you can enchant that card with something else. Sown is probably best on some sort of power that you need to have some setup, and you will usually make some sort of trade in terms of HP to play it. But overall, I think this goes kind of 50-50. Like, it can be either way. They're both just very good options. So just a really strong event, no matter what. Tablet of Truth. Lose 3 max HP, upgrade a random card. You can continue to do this until you decide to just leave the event. Overall, I think every time I've seen this option, I've clicked the top one 3 times and gotten out. So I lose 21 max, I believe. Yeah. And then I leave. And you're left with like 54 max HP. But 3 random upgrades is kind of going to carry your early game. And losing max HP is often a completely irrelevant downside, as we know from how strong Transform 2 at Niao is. So usually I'm just slamming the top one. I think the 20 HP heal could be a bailout in a certain situation, like you're really low, forced into like a hallway or something, and you need to click it. But for the most part, the top option will save more than 20 over time, and I don't really mind losing the max HP. Again, feels like a event that's very weighted towards one option being very strong, and then just kind of leaving. Even in the early game, because this is Act 1, like 3 upgraded strikes is just very good. Unrest Site. Okay, I don't think I've actually seen this event, and that's going to be the case for like a few things. I think just having 2 different Act 1s means that you see these events a lot less, and oftentimes I'm not running into a ton of events in Act 1. So this is like not showing up all the time, you know, but overall, Random Relic, really strong. You can obviously just heal to full, but that's a complete desperation option. If you can click the bottom here, you just slam it. Max HP, again, completely trivial to lose. So you just click kill the trees and stop thinking unless you're literally dying, but you never really want the curse in your deck, of course, although this is not one that's horrible to get. A curse that says retain really just says you don't have to redraw it in your second deck cycle, so you only draw it one time and it's not impacting you again and again. I don't mind it. I think also this is a curse that you would probably still remove strike over this. It's pretty interesting in that way, but for the most part, slam bottom, max HP again, doesn't really matter. Okay, Wellspring. Bottle, procure 1 random potion, or bathe, remove 1 card from your deck, add 1 guilty to your deck. Guilty is a very interesting curse. It basically just says unplayable, remove from your deck after 5 combats. So really this is a delayed remove. I like both options here. I think if you can get value out of the pot, like running into an elite, it's oftentimes better to do that. Since bathe is so delayed and it takes 5 combats, this sometimes doesn't even leave your deck until Act 2. And a lot of decks are not capable of carrying around a random brick for the entire act. especially since Act 1 is so dangerous. So I do find myself clicking the top option pretty frequently out of need to click it. I always want to click the bottom, and obviously if you have 2 potions already, click the bottom, because losing a strike is not so like important even in the early game. It's just that the potion is such a big deal breaker for actually meeting thresholds in the elites. Potions are just really strong resources to have. So again, something you can click both at, just dependent on how things are going in your run. Okay, Whispering Hollow. Lose 50 gold, procure 2 random potions, or lose 9 HP, choose a card to transform. Notably, this is not max HP, this is actual HP, but again, transforms are very, very strong. I do like this event a lot because I feel like both the downsides are pretty manageable and both the options are also very good. If you see this on like floor 2, and you don't have a lot of hallway fights to actually stock up on potions and no early shop or whatever, this is something that's going to get you through a hard act. And if you don't have a super hard act, you can click transform. So basically think about whether or not your map is really difficult or not, and whether or not you actually have valuable potions. If you just have like potions or a potion you don't care about, and you're really scared about actually living the short term, then the top option is going to be better. Transform has insane high roll potential and is almost always going to be better than a basic anyways. So if you can afford the life loss and that's not going to kill you, I will click bottom, but top is also very, very viable to click as well. Okay. Wood carvings. Open a dusty box to find 3 elaborate wood carvings. You can transform a starter card into Peck or Toric Toughness, which are below. Peck says deal 2 damage 3 times. Toric Toughness says gain 5 block. Gain 5 block at the start of the next 2 turns for 2 energy. So Toric Toughness says essentially 15 block for 2 energy, although it's delayed, which is a very good rate. Overall, I think I don't want Peck very often unless it's exactly Vantham. Although it can open some of the enchantments to go kind of crazy. For example, the ones that add scaling damage every time you play the card or adds flat damage. And then the Peck upgrades to hit 4 times and can really take advantage of that. Vantham is a really, really big use case for Peck here. So you can think about that. I think if this is like one of the first events you see and there's a lot of events you're going into, you're more likely to see enchantment events and you can take Peck. Although Toric Toughness, the enchant on it's like getting +2 dex essentially can be really, really good, which is another option that can happen. And also like shops can give things that add that as well. Toric Toughness is just really kind of overstated for the most part, especially for early game. And I don't mind it. It's a really solid upgrade. So I think both the cards can get picked sometimes. And I've also had the middle option Snake, enchant 1 card with Slither, which basically gives it Snecko Eye buff. When you draw it, you randomize the cost from 0 to 3. So I've had a run with Bludgeon with Slither on it, and then when I draw the Bludgeon, the average cost it's going to be is 1.5. Obviously, it's not going to cost 1.5, but most of the time when you draw it, it's less than 3, which does cheat a lot of energy, and you can really high roll with 0. So Slither can be really strong if you have a valid target for it. If not, you're not so unhappy to just click the other options either. Like Peck is very rarely worse than Strike, and Toric Toughness is very rarely worse than Defend. So I think all of these are pretty viable. So overall, like this event a lot. I find myself trying to not click Peck unless it feels very needed. If you need some desperate damage boost, then it can be something to high roll out of the act, or again into Vantham to break the buffers basically. Okay. Now we're into Underdocks events. Abyssal Bass. This says gain max HP, take current life damage, and the second option is to heal 10. If you click the top option, you can keep clicking it indefinitely, and the damage will go up by 1. Again, this is an evaluation of how scary the run is and how good of a position you're in. If you need immediate power, click the heal and leave. If you have a relatively safe act, this can make your rest stronger and sort of snowball into later advantage. So basically, this is really just power now versus power later. If you can click the top option, I find myself wanting to click it probably 3 or 4 times usually before I sort of leave. The damage does start to add up, but it's not so big since the max HP is offsetting the damage taken as well. So you do end up kind of getting owned a little bit, but if you can rest afterwards, for example, the rest is going to be stronger. Interesting, cool with Lizard Tail, like mentioned in chat here, and also like Fairy in a Bottle. That's usually not super relevant, but yeah, cool events. This is one of those things that I think most of the time I want to click the top option, but if I need to click the bottom, it is there for you. It doesn't force you into something terrible, which is really nice. A lot of events do that, and having it out here to always have a good option is just nice if you don't want to take the top one. Doors of Light and Dark. Light says upgrade 2 random cards, and Dark says remove 1 from your deck. Depending on how early you see this, the options get better. So the earlier into the run you see this, the top option is much better. Random upgrades are just very strong. This is basically a Niao bonus in itself, and can really carry. Removes get stronger as you add more cards that you want to be looping and playing more often, and also stronger with more deck synergy. So if you see this on like floor 2 or floor 3 or something, I almost always slam the top one, but the bottom one obviously is never going to be bad either. Most of the time, this is just completely dependent on when you see it inside of the act, but do not discount how strong random upgrades are. I think a lot of people sleep on that. I would click that most of the time if I see this like in the first 5 floors or so. Unless maybe I'm playing Regent who really likes having removes, since I need to draw Star Gen and Star Payoff in the right order, and removes are just really strong. So a little character dependent. On Necrobinder as well, I think the upgraded strikes don't really matter very much, so I will not really click the top option very often. I think I'm just most of the time removing strike here on Necro. The other characters I'm definitely thinking a lot harder. The random upgrades are just kind of strong, even if they just hit base cards. If they hit defends, it's a ton of chip saved, and your starter cards are usually just going to be good to hit as well. Okay, Drowning Beacon. This is a really, really interesting event. First option says procure Glow Water Potion, which says exhaust your hand, draw 10 cards. Insanely broken potion, but oftentimes is not something you really want in early game. I think most of the time in early game, you don't want consistency potions. You want like output potions in terms of I generate random energy out of nowhere, like an attack pot or skill pot or the barricade potion or something. Glow Water Potion is really, really strong if you can hold on to it for endgame, but unfortunately, Fresnel Lens here says whenever you add a card that gains block to your deck, enchant it with Nimble 2. Since you see this inside of Act 1, every block card you're going to add from now on out gets increased by 2, which is basically having a free footwork in the deck. And you only lose 13 max, which again, not really relevant at all as a downside. This event is like 99.9% Fresnel Lens. So you really don't have to think very hard here. For the most part, you're just clicking the bottom. Unless you're literally dying right now and you have like no potions or something and you take Glow Water and just use that in the next fight to survive. It's a little tragic, I think, that these options come together because one is just so much stronger than the other at this point. If you saw Glow Water in the end game, this is a completely different event. But again, this is happening inside of Act 1. So you're almost always just clicking the bottom. Fresnel Lens is insane. Like, I think this is like boss relic levels of strength, to be honest, or will be over the course of a run. Like a free footwork is just not okay. It's really, really strong. Okay, Endless Conveyor. This is a really cool event. So this is basically just randomized and you keep paying gold to keep getting bonuses. If you click Observe the Chef here, you will immediately upgrade a random card in your deck, and then you cannot actually pay money. So you get to do one of 2 options. If you start the chain and click to pay gold for something, you can keep randomizing that option and continue to roll until you want to leave. But if you click Observe the Chef, you then have to leave the event. You cannot continue doing something in the future. Overall, if you can sink a lot of gold into this thing, it's almost always going to be good. There's a couple of duds that you don't want. The main one is the random colors card, grab Fried Eel off the belt. You oftentimes do not want to add random crap into your deck. Almost everything else is just really, really strong. So I think you just click this most of the time if you have gold and you're not immediately going into a shop, and just get stuff until you see the colorless card and leave. Sometimes you can get lucky and get a ton of things. And if you do see the colorless card option, there is even a case where if you have a lot of gold to just keep clicking it because you need a gold sink. It's not so bad. Like one random card into your deck is not so bad that you should ever stop here. But that is the one that makes me consider stopping the most. If you also just don't have a lot of gold, just click the bottom option and get out of here. But it's a very cool event. I like this one a lot. And I think it leads to a lot of interesting decisions as well. Just look at the map, see if you have a shop coming up. Most of the time you're just slamming the top option until you roll the colorless card or you run out of gold. Okay, Punch Off. This basically lets you choose whether or not you want an injury for a random relic, so a curse for a relic, or to fight them to get a potion and a relic as well as the extra like regular combat rewards. These are enemies that you fight later into the run, so they're pretty hard. So you do need to have sort of a strong deck. Unfortunately, if you don't, you're forced to click the curse, which feels really bad. The relic can bail you out of a bad spot, but I think most of the time, if you can click this and not die, and you feel relatively strong, or you have potions that you're willing to sink into this fight to get out of it, you should be doing that. So most of the time, you want to click the I can take them option. If you're not allowed to because you think you'll die, and maybe you need to take this fight a few times to understand how scary it is. It is pretty scary, but it's not impossible to beat. So I think just try clicking it most of the time and learn until you start dying and realize when you absolutely need to take the injury. But if you can take the bottom option and get out of it, even if you spend all your potions, it's really, really good to do so. You get your potions back. So it basically lets you dump all of your rewards into the event, or all your resources into the event, to get a bunch of stuff back and get a relic and become really strong. So huge, huge, huge snowballing potential, but really scary. Spiraling Whirlpool. You can enchant a strike or defend with Spiral, which says it gains replay 1. So every time you play it, the card plays again. Drink is 33% max HP heal. Overall, this is almost always going to be enchanting Defend with Spiral. This is just a really, really, really strong event. Defend having double play, if you upgrade it, means that you're playing a block card that says 1 energy deals 16. Or block for 16, which is kind of crazy. Replay on defend is just way too strong. And if you have any way to buff your defense, you're just getting more value out of this. It makes it like a legitimately good card. We don't really have to talk about the other options very much. If you know you need a heal because you're dying right away, it's the same as the other options that just heal you versus a really good long-term effect. So yeah, Spiral defend, really, really strong. If you have like Fresnel Lens or something too, all your defense and blocks and things are just going to be like really, really high output, and you really don't need to draft all that much. Like, this can really be a block card that you loop for the rest of the run. And there's a lot of ways to just get random amounts of block output inside of Act 1, I think, as you see from these events. Really, really, really cool events. I like this a lot. Okay, Sunken Statue. You can grab these Sword of Stone or gain 113 gold and lose 7 HP. You will get a relic after defeating 5 elites. This is always the same. It will give you 3 strength. On some characters, that is not relevant at all. Like, for example, on Necrobinder, that's really not going to be relevant. And overall, this is probably not turning into the sword until like Act 3 or late Act 2. It's not that crazy, and obviously gives you no power boost. If you have any shop coming up, I probably just take the gold like 90% of the time. If you cannot afford HP loss or have no shop, obviously don't click the bottom option, just because it can literally kill you, and the top option is not negative. But yeah, getting gold to lose 7 HP can be a very large downside and actually cause you to die in the short term. Again, sort of just an option that you sort of weigh. Unfortunately, most of the time, the 113 gold is better long-term value than the Sword of the Stone as is. So for the most part, it's just, can I click the bottom option? It's not a super interesting event. I think the sword maybe needs to transform earlier, or just be different, or maybe be a random relic or something. It's not so great. Maybe it's like random 2 relics and then it's cool. But yeah, for the most part, I'm clicking the bottom option 80-90%. Okay, Sunken Treasury. First option, gain 63 gold. Second chest, gain 306 gold, receive Greed. Greed is an unplayable eternal curse, so you cannot remove it or transform it. It's very permanent. So it's basically the same as the event from Niao, where you get like 333 gold. It's a very similar amount of gold, same curse. If you have early shop inside of your path, then you can take this. 306 gold is very strong. You can usually just remove a base card with that and buy a relic, which is really, really cool. The Greed, again, just pretend it's a strike and maybe you won't be so upset about it. It's not as bad, I think, as people think. There is tolerance to carrying curses in this game. Although, subtract your remove cost from the 306 gold, and that's really what you're getting. If there's no shop right away, you obviously don't want to carry this Greed for a very long time. You don't want to have no immediate power boost while you add an absolute brick into your deck. So this really just depends on how early, or how a shop lies in your path, basically. And I think it's worth mentioning that oftentimes when you have pathing decisions to have question marks before stores, it's usually better. And same thing as Inspire 1, because there's just a lot of events that give gold or have things that you want to remove, or maybe long-term events that you want to buy short-term value in the store to survive, like potions or something, to get the chance to activate your really broken long-term events. Or maybe you get Fresno Lens and you want to buy like block cards in the store. Like, stores are just really, really strong nodes in general. But if you have the option to path like to question marks before the store or fights before stores, usually it's like pretty good to get a little bit of information first before you walk into the store and decide how to spend money. And this is a cool concept, I think, as well, about saving some gold for Act 2, because after you see your boss reward, you'll often need to adjust your deck a little bit to be able to have kind of a strong position. So you can sort of play around your boss relic or your ancient bonus and buy things that cover the weakness of that bonus. So sometimes saving gold for later acts can be a thing, but it's the same idea as holding gold for later when you have more information. This is not, I think, a super interesting event. The top option does not give that much gold, so not really all that exciting. It's mostly just, can I make use of the second one? If not, click the top one. It's not super interesting. Okay, Trash Heap. You discover a towering pile of scrapped weapons, discarded trinkets, and other oddities. This is a bit of a throwback to Spire 1 event, which is very, very similar downside of lose 8 HP, obtain a random forgotten relic from the past, or gain 100 gold, obtain a random forgotten card from the past. For the most part, if the 8 HP is not costing you the run, click the top option. The relics cannot really be negative. At the bottom, you can see it comes from Periapt, Dreamcatcher, Handdrill, Mawbank, or the Boot. None of these are particularly broken relics. I think Dreamcatcher I like the most here, or Mawbank. But these are all relics that were Inspire 1 that are completely unchanged. And then the second one, I think, can give you like Clash and a few other things that were listed on the character like tier list that I didn't rank. Again, these cards are not really all that great either. I think for the most part, the bottom card is almost always going to be something you don't want. But again, it's just, am I allowed to click the top one? For the most part, I don't think these are like very strong cards. Hello World is honestly probably the best one. Overall, just not all that great. I think most of these cards are just going to be bad for you, especially at this point in the run. So I am almost always clicking the top option here. Again, if you die for clicking it, then please don't click it. But again, this event feels very much like I want to always click one option, and I will click the other one out of desperation sometimes. Yeah, not super exciting. Click dive in if you're allowed to. 8 HP is not super high price to pay, although the relics are not insanely good anyways. I think overall that event's just not very good. Okay, Waterlog Scriptorium. There's a lot of different options here. You can always click Bloody Ink to gain 6 max, and the rest are determined by how much gold you have. If you do not have the amount of gold to pay, you just cannot click it. So both of these do the same thing, just different amounts of it. You enchant a card with Steady, or you enchant 2 cards with Steady for 65 gold or 155 gold respectively. Steady means that the card gains Retain. Retain is a crazy, crazy keyword. If you're familiar with where I ranked Pyramid on the Boss Relics tier list, you'll probably understand how I value this event. There are so many cards that need to be played in correct draw order at the right time. Even just enchanting block cards or like Neutralize or Survivor at the right time is just insane. I will almost always, I think, pay 155 if I have the gold to click it. This is just an invaluable thing to be able to add to a card. And you will know if you have a card that really is timing restrictive. If you have something that you just slam on sight like an Adrenaline, you don't really want to. But again, even Survivor and Neutralize, something like that is really good. Aside from that, you can also just enchant things to hold into your hand to not redraw them. I would not recommend that. I think oftentimes you want to just hold a card in your hand. If you have Particle Wall, you just have infinite block cards in your hand as long as you have stars. That's a really crazy interaction. But yeah, Retain is a really, really strong keyword. Almost always, if I can pay for this, I really want to. If you have literally no cards to click on this, maybe you only enchant like one of your starter cards or something. But this way, I like never miss my bash on Ironclad. I don't brick my block cards. Basically, it just does so much for you. Really, really strong event. Has some really cool interactions as well. Regent, this is insanely broken on just like the starters. Holding star cards for start generation even. It only gets better with more cards added to your deck. Even if you see it early, it's still good on your base deck. So just really, really crazy events. Okay. Act 2, Hive. Since we have no alt acts now, this is just all of Act 2 into one. First one is Amalgamator. You can combine 2 strikes to add ultimate strike to your deck, or remove 2 defends to add ultimate defend to your deck. I don't really care so much about these cards in particular at this point in the run most of the time. What I care about is the fact that it says remove. This is really remove 1 card and just create a card that's actually good. Really strong event though, like free remove and make a very dense good card is really good. So oftentimes I think if you've added a decent amount of block cards, I'd rather have the ultimate defend since I want to be removing my strikes later anyways. If you just want to remove strikes, you can just click the top option. I think these are both solid options. It just depends on the density of block cards to damage cards in your deck. I think Baylor said it nicely in Spire 1. A rough ballpark, and this is like really dependent and not something you want to rely on, but a rough ballpark for how many block cards you want in your deck compared to damage cards is like 1/3. So you can sort of ballpark that and maybe change your option depending on this. If you have a high density of block cards, it's fine to remove 2 basics to add 1 really good block card to the deck. If you just have like a lot of attacks and not a whole lot of defense, it's probably better to just remove strikes. Ultimate Defense is a much better card than Ultimate Strike for the most part. You just want to play that more often than a card that just does 14 damage at this point in the run. But the remove strikes are better than remove defense. So yeah, I think like better removes, worse option versus worse removes, better option is a cool dynamic. And I end up clicking these roughly evenly. I would say most of the time I'm clicking the remove to defense, but I'm also building a lot of decks that have front load block in them already. So it will depend on deck construction, but overall both options are really good. Okay, Bug Slayer. I hate this event. I think this is probably one of the worst in the game, unfortunately. It just forces you to add a card into your deck. And I think as we get through these events, and as I was looking into the events to kind of prep for this and like kind of look at other things, I just don't like this very often. And Act 2 events often can just force cards into your deck. Exterminate says 3 damage 4 times to all enemies, which is like kind of a decent AoE card, and Squash says deal 10 damage, apply 2 Vuln. Both cost 1 energy. Having Vuln in your kit can be a good thing, and Exterminate can be okay, and can also play with some enchantments to like increase stuff, but you have to like sort of carry this around. I think by the time you see this, most of the time you're not really happy with either, but you're probably more likely to want debuffs than you are to want AoE at this point, since that's hopefully already in your deck. I think for Act 1 you oftentimes need AoE, or will feel more comfortable with AoE. Obviously sometimes you don't see it, and at this point the amount of AoE damage that it's doing is not really enough for Act 2, and also not as important. So most of the time I'm clicking Squash here, but I'm not really happy with either. I think what this really means is I'm just pathing into less events in Act 2 if I survive, which is something to talk about in pathing, I think. But overall, just maybe don't spam click every single event inside of Act 2. I think a lot of them do have downsides like this, where you just don't want either option. And you should probably, at the start of the act, just look at all the events and think about which options would be good or bad for you. And if there's a disproportionate amount of bad options, maybe you just try to path differently. If you're literally dying and have to run into events, that's a whole different story. But yeah, it's not so easy to just click all the question marks like you could in Spire 1, I think, and be happier. Act 2 was just really scary back then. Okay, Colorful Philosophers. This event will give you a choice of 3 different random characters that you are currently not playing. So for example, if you're playing Clad, you cannot see a Clad option here. You will get to see 3 of the 4 remaining characters. When you click that, then you will get a screen with 3 card rewards. The first one is exclusively common, the second one is exclusively uncommon, and the third is exclusively rares. So you'll see 9 cards, 3 of which are common, 3 of which are uncommon, and 3 of which are rare. You can skip any amount of these, and they all come from the character pool that you have selected. Every time I've seen this, and I've had Necrobinder on the screen, I think I've clicked it. You do sort of want to see and think about generically how good are the cards without any synergy, because if you're playing, for example, Clad and see defect cards, you're probably going to see a lot of like orb cards that just don't do anything for you. Characters generally have kits that work together with their own kits. The most standalone one are the Necro cards and the Silent cards and the Clad cards, probably in that order. Regent has a bunch of random star cost cards that other characters can't take advantage of. So I think you probably click in that order most of the time, but do think about what you can possibly see to synergize with stuff that's in your kit. There's some cool combos you can get with this, but for the most part, I think Necro cards just work the best without having other stuff. Like the block cards are just kind of the better ones, and Doom is fine to see because the numbers are just like fine. You do run into seeing Aussie cards as mentioned in chat here, but overall, I think I've been happiest when I click Necrobinder here. Really weird, but you can skip stuff. It's just like you don't want to have a completely dead event here. Most of the time, this ends up being good. And yeah, you cannot use an Austie attack unless Austie is already alive, as Baylor has mentioned here. So other characters are going to struggle with that. But for the most part, you're not wanting to click attacks at this point in the run, unless you see something really broken. So yeah, those three characters, probably that's what you want to click. The other ones I would probably shy away from. If you literally have no other options, which is not possible, then yeah, we don't need to talk about it, I guess. Okay. Colossal Flower. This is a really interesting event to me. This feels similar to the Cursed Tome events from Spire 1 inside of Act 2. The option, the first one is just 35 gold, which is something you click if you absolutely cannot afford to click the second option. But if you can spend the HP here, and you would have to spend 5 plus 6 plus 7. So to get a very broken relic, Paladin's Course has every 4 turns draw 2 additional cards. The important thing about this event is that you can set it up between fights. So if you are willing to play a bit more patiently, you can set up Paladin's Core to just draw 2 cards on turn 1 of every single fight. This is obviously an incredibly strong relic, and has more of a ceiling than Bag of Prep since you can activate it multiple times per fight as well. Obviously, it comes at the cost of 18 HP. So you do have to think, and it's not something you can always click. If you cannot click it, or maybe you just want to click once and then get 75 gold and leave, then go ahead and do that. But for the most part, I really want to be clicking the bottom one all the way through to get the relic, unless it's literally going to kill me. It's just a really strong thing to have, completely game, like run-defining relic. Insanely strong. And yeah, like Baylor mentions, if you have Silent or like a Bag of Prep already, you can set it up to proc on turn 2 or something, or draw 7 on turns 4. Yeah, like it's really crazy, right? Like you can get the Silent upgrades relic and then have 1 through 4 turns where you draw 7, which is just nuts. Really cool, versatile relic, high skill expression, very fun. I like this one a lot. Okay, Doll Room, another one that's pretty interesting here. There are 3 possible dolls, so the options really just say you can get 1 random doll, you can get 1 of 2 and choose, or 1 of 3 and choose. If you click 1 of 3, you can always pick the one you want. Bing Bong, I think, is the most niche, which says whenever you add a card to your deck, gain 1 additional copy. This works the bad way with something like Curses, and oftentimes if you're adding like Unattack to your deck, you can sort of grief yourself. And Transforms as well will add duplicates, so you can end up getting completely owned here. The notable thing I think here is if you have Clone from your Ancients to clone like an Adrenaline or something, and you add additional copies of that clone card, now you can start getting like into the thousands of that card very easily. Not an exaggeration. So you can start doing some crazy things with it. For the most part, I think I don't want to click option 1 because most runs probably do not want Bing Bong. I would say the best option here most of the time generically is Daughter of the Wind, which is whenever you plan attack, gain 1 block. It's just nice. You're probably going to gain 2 to 3 block a turn. Some decks you're going to really go off with this and gain more. So for the most part, I will click the second option since it's the lowest, I think, HP cost for the highest chance of getting something pickable. And Mr. Struggles just says at the start of your turn, deal damage equal to the turn number to all enemies. So it's sort of slow scaling AoE damage throughout a fight. Not insane, but obviously can add up. Notable interactions with fish. Yeah, very cool interactions, I think, in this event. For the most part, if you really want to just make sure you get Daughter and you have the HP to spare, you can just throw it at 15. But paying 5 life to make sure you just don't get Bing Bong is kind of important, I think, most of the time. It's a reasonable price to pay to avoid it. Yeah, I agree. yeah, most of the time I want Daughter here. If you can't afford it, I'd say paying 15 HP will probably reward you with 15 HP pretty quickly in a couple fights. Daughter will just save that amount. If you don't play that many attacks in your deck, then obviously you don't click that and you'll just take Mr. Struggles. But if you don't have HP to spare, obviously, you just have to click option 2 sometimes. Okay, Field of Man-sized holes. I think this is kind of a cool event. Resist is the first option. It says remove 2 cards from your deck, add Normality, which is a curse that says you cannot play more than 3 cards per turn. Notably, you can remove this curse. So this is really just one remove immediately with like kind of downside attached to it. If you can play around the Normality or even shop incoming, it can really just be a free remove. Perfect Fit, enter your hole, it lets you enchant a card to always end up on the top of your draw pile whenever you shuffle. So if you have a card you really want to draw before other cards in your deck cycle, it can be really interesting to sort of loop it over and over, or just cycle an important card very quickly. So I would say like Banshee's Cry would be something that before maybe you would want to enchant here. For example, you know that you can always play Banshee's Cry after playing all the ethereal cards in your first deck cycle, and then you get to play Banshee's Cry immediately, and it just comes online as fast as possible, basically. It's really interesting, but doesn't always get clicked. It's not so universal, I think, compared to some of the other enchantments. It's not always really that positive, whereas a remove oftentimes is. But obviously, sometimes you can just not be able to play around the Normality and you're going to get owned by it, and you just want to click the second option to not have a downside. It just maybe not doing that much for you. So really run dependent. I think both these options are cool, which is something I like from my events, is having meaningful choices. Overall, I think they did a really good job inside of Spire 2, making more events that matter doing this. So can click either. I don't know what percentage I'm really clicking both. It just feels like it's completely dependent on the run. Okay, Infested Automaton. This says option 1, obtain a random power, or touch the core, obtain a random 0-cost card. Once again, another event that just forces something into your deck. When it says random, this comes from your character's card pool, which I really don't like this. I think oftentimes you're going to click the random power just because it gets out of your deck after you play it. And if you have a problem scaling, powers are oftentimes going to be the best way to fix a scaling problem. It can obviously be very positive and high roll, but I really don't love just getting random crap in my deck and not having any option about it. And again, there's like 3 of these events, I think, inside of Act 2, 2 or 3, if I'm remembering correctly. So yeah, not always a time where you're just going to run into every question mark because you can see all of these things get owned. I had a run where I had a very strong setup going into Act 2, and I ran into 7 question marks for content and saw like all the events that did this, and my deck was just complete garbage by the end of it. So yeah, it can completely own you. I oftentimes will click random power just to not mess up what my deck's doing, and the powers usually are pretty good. They're always uncommon or higher. Powers cannot be common, and usually that means that their overall quality of that card is better rather than like getting a 0-cost card. Okay, Lost Wisp. First option, add decay to your deck, obtain the Lost Wisp. Lost Wisp says whenever you play a power, deal 8 damage to all enemies. This is a relic. This adds Decay, which is a curse that is unplayable, and if it's in your hand, you take 2 damage. This does not say lose 2 life, so it can be blocked. This is not one of the worst curses. Second option is 75 gold, no strings attached, basically. Honestly, for the most part, I don't think at this point in the run, the 8 AoE is all that relevant. So I'm most of the time clicking option 2 here. It's unfortunate because I think Lost Wisp is a cool idea, just kind of front loading your powers. If you see this really early into Act 2 and maybe with the early store or something, I wouldn't mind it. The curse again is not that horrendous, so it's not really that big of a downside, but the relic just doesn't seem high impact to add the card to my deck instead of just taking the remove gold, basically. Yeah, it can be funny with like Defect Creative AI or something, or a deck that has like 3 or 4 powers in it. You'll know when it's good when you see it, but for the most part, I think 90+% of the time, I'm just clicking option 2, unfortunately. Doesn't seem like the trade-off is really worth the benefit here most of the time. Okay, Spirit Grafter. Option 1, let it in. Heal 25 HP, add Metamorphosis to your deck. Metamorphosis is a card from Spire 1 that says add 3 random attacks in your draw pile. They're free to play this combat exhaust. Cost 2. Option 2 is lose 9 HP, remove a card. This is essentially remove 2 because adding Metamorphosis into your deck is not a good option. You rarely ever want to play it. On the beta branch, the second option has been changed to lose 10 HP, upgrade a card, which again, they're taking a lot of removes out of events, I think, is a good thing probably to not let you do like degenerate things with a bunch of removes. I basically never want to click option 1. If you need to click it, you will know if you're literally dying. Otherwise, I'm clicking option 2 always. But the swing here is kind of crazy. It's a 35 HP swing. The difference between clicking option A and B is 35 HP. And that's a big swing. Oftentimes, you do not have 35 HP to throw away. So sometimes you can just have to click this, which is really, really sad. Again, random cards come from your character. So when you're playing Metamorphosis, you're rolling your character's card pool. Attacks are kind of the worst type of thing to randomly add into your deck for the most part. So this is the worst version of this card. There was other ones, Inspire 1, like that would add skills into your deck, and that was more pickable than this. This was like a very much an Act 1 pick only to like cheese elites inside of Act 1, and this is not something you want to click ever. Okay, we have the Lantern Key events here, which is really cool. So you walk in and the Mysterious Knight asks to fight you. You can click option 1 to get 100 gold, no strings attack, or you can take this additional fight to obtain the key. This fight does give you a curse. It's a quest, but it's a curse. That gives you a really strong event inside of the next act. The first question mark you walk into will give you History Course. History Course basically says the last attacker skill you play every turn is played at the beginning of your next turn, which is essentially delayed Echo Form. And if you know anything about how crazy Echo Form is, it's disgustingly good. We almost always want History Course. The question is, can you take it? Also, this fight's not a joke. The Knight hits pretty hard. So option 1 can be clicked, or you can take option 2 and leave the key on the ground if the fight's really easy, because you get like potion chance, card reward, whatever. You get like a regular fights reward, which is good. Like I want to see card rewards. So oftentimes if you're allowed to, I just click option 2 unless you're running into the store, or maybe you're not so strong to be able to take the events. It's a crazy relic if you can. If you're ahead of curve, it is definitely worth taking the Lantern Key to just get it in the next act. It's really strong. But again, I think an interesting event. I like it when I have like a really difficult like thing to carry for super high reward like this that's actually worth it, as opposed to some of the Act 1 ones that just don't feel worth carrying around. But yeah, oftentimes I want to take the key. It's just, do you get to or not? If you have a lot of pressure now, you cannot click it. Okay, Zen Weaver. Differing amounts of gold here to get different stuff. First option is pay 50 gold to add 2 Enlightenment to your deck. Enlightenment is a 0 cost card in this game. It says reduce the cost of all cards in your hand to 1 this turn, exhaust. I don't think I'm ever really clicking this. Oftentimes I don't think you should have a deck that really makes use of 2 Enlightenments. It just feels really awkward to me. I don't want 2 of them. If anything, I want 1. It feels like if you have a deck that wants 2 Enlightenments, you're very sad, or you've had something go very wrong. The other options are just very overcosted removes. 125 per remove here. You can click the 250 to remove 2. It is very overcosted to do this. Obviously, removes are strong, but I don't want to pay this much money for it. Sometimes, like, removes are just limited by the number of nodes you can actually see the remove option in, and it can let you, like, sink your 250 gold to remove 2, and then dodge a shop to get a different path that has different value, or different nodes. So it can be that you click the remove and you're happy about it. For the most part, I'm just clicking remove to not have to click Enlightenments, and it robs me of my money. So you will have to think a bit about how much gold you want to spend here. For the most part, I think this is going to kill your shop no matter what. So if you can afford 250, I'm probably just clicking it and just not going to it. If you're forced into a shop or you really need the power boost that the shop's going to give you, you can click option 2 and just be really sad. But option 1 is just, I think, bricking you too often to want to ever click it. Okay, Act 3, Glory. First one is Battle-Worn Dummy. So you basically have to fight a training dummy that does not hit you at all for different rewards. The reward tier basically depends on how much HP it has. So this really is an output check. You get 3 turns to kill this thing. Take the one that you can win. I've taken this a couple of times knowing that I'm not going to be able to get the 300 HP dummy killed. 300 HP in 3 turns is really, really difficult to actually do, especially if you see this early on into the run. It's really hard to get the relic here. Very, very hard. For the most part, I think 150 is probably the one that you're clicking most often, but just look at your deck, realistically see how much front load you can do. I think most decks are not going to be able to do 300 damage, and we'll probably want to click the second option most of the time. If you're really not strong at all or your deck is very block heavy, then click option 1, just see if you can get anything out of this. But yeah, overall, I don't love this event. I think it's just really a difficult threshold to meet. It does reward you for being ahead of curve, but oftentimes I don't like events that are doing that all that much. I'd rather have events that can be useful even if I'm having a bad run. It's pretty sad to see this most of the time. Okay, Grave of the Forgotten. Option 1 says confront the truth, or confront with truth. Add decay to your deck, enchant a card that exhausts with Soul's Power. Soul's Power says this card loses exhaust. That is a ridiculous enchant. This goes infinite with a million things. If you have Adrenaline, if you have Big Bang, if you have, I don't know, like almost anything that's just breakable that just is supposed to get out of your deck and doesn't, just a ridiculous enchant. Sometimes you don't have anything that works with this, unfortunately, and you'll take Accept the Forgotten Soul, which just says whenever you exhaust a card, deal 1 damage to a random enemy. This is like kind of bad Charon's Ashes from the first game. It's not a very good relic, but you obviously don't have to take the decay. If this is broken, you will know it. Apparition, yeah, Apparition is crazy, and we can remove Dirge Exhaust as well, as Baylor says. Yeah, ridiculous enchant most of the time. I think, again, it's pretty easy to know. Scythe is a good shout. Genetic Algorithm. Yeah, there's a lot of things that just get completely broken with this. So just look through all your cards, look at all the things that say exhaust. Imagine if you could play them again. Really cool. I like this event a lot. I wish the second option was a little more thought into it other than do I have something breakable? Because really it's just a click the top option always unless I just have nothing. So unfortunately, it's just not all that interesting most of the time. You just click the thing, but it is something that's oftentimes very strong, which is a different thing to talk about. Okay, Hungry for Mushrooms. Option 1, Big Mushroom, draw 2 fewer cards at the start of combat, raise your max HP by 20, or Fragrant Mushroom, lose 15 HP, upgrade 3 random cards. I don't like this event. I think at this point in the run, I'm not really happy to see either of these things. Oftentimes, drawing 2 fewer cards at the start of each combat will cost you way more than 20 HP, as being usually the most important turn. One really funny interaction with this is if you have Bread, which you might have pretty frequently, actually, since it's such a good shop relic. So if you do have Bread, maybe you can take fewer cards at the start of combat since you really can't play them anyways and just be big. But most of these just have like a really significant downside attached to it. 3 random upgrades at this point in the run usually doesn't matter that much. So there's 15 health, and 15 health is so much, especially when I think right now the real way you can actually beat the boss gauntlet is by having a lot of HP. I feel like I almost never can beat the boss gauntlet without full HP, especially if Door and Beta Branch Door in particular, I guess, is in the boss gauntlet. It just feels really hard. You just need a lot of HP into that fight. Also can potentially need a lot of HP into the 3-headed dog, basically, because phase 1 can be really scary if your deck is more setup heavy or more skill heavy. Say, for example, Necrobinder. Okay. Reflections. Funny named event. I don't like this event at all. I think both of the times I've been forced to click this, I've been kind of sad no matter what. I've had one funny run where I got the second option, which says duplicate your deck, receive bad luck, which is a really terrible curse that you cannot remove. It says at the end of your turn, if this is in your hand, lose 13 HP. I've had this twice. Silence, I was able to sort of discard it and not have to deal with it. Yeah, with Bing Bong, this triples your deck and gets 2 bad lucks. But oftentimes, most decks don't want to increase the amount of variance of drawing into their important cards. I think the one time I clicked this that it was legitimately good was really on a defect run that had defrag and loop plus, and I just needed more top end. So I didn't really mind that I like drew those things sort of later because I just needed more scaling, and I was able to get a lot of top end by just having more powers to play. So that's probably the main thing that you look at when you look at this duplicate your deck, is how often do you get powers that increase your top end scaling and maybe cheese the boss gauntlet, because the curse is really bad. You cannot mitigate this by blocking it. It just says lose the HP. So you need to have some way to deal with this, or you need to just accept that you're going to get owned by this a few times. It's really hard to mitigate this downside here. It just comes like really with a strong downside to not want to take Shadow very often. Touch of Mirror says downgrade 2 random cards, upgrade 4 random. This can hit the same cards twice. So you can end up downgrading 2 cards and hitting those 2 cards and getting them upgraded again. And it doesn't really change anything. Again, most of the time, the important cards in your deck are upgraded. You don't have random upgrades that you want to be losing, and you've sort of upgraded most of the cards that you do want. So oftentimes it says really just remove 2 upgrades off of cards and gamble to see if you get them back. Does not feel good. If you end up removing a very critical upgrade, like let's say on your defrag, for example, you can be really sad. So oftentimes this event is just really, really scary. I don't love this thing almost ever. I've had some funny runs with Shatter, but for the most part, I think you sort of just get screwed. Option 1 is way less likely to screw you. So if you're in a spot where you think both are bad, probably just click the top one. Okay, the round tea party. Option 1 is enjoy your tea, obtain royal poison, heal to full. Royal poison says at the start of each combat, lose 4 health. This can be good if you see it late into the act. For the most part, I don't think you really want to take this. It's a bailout in case you're actually dying. I have not found myself in a position yet to click the top option, but I definitely can conjure scenarios where it's required to take. And again, I think there's a lot of events like that where if you are getting completely owned, you have to click an option. You can get bailed out. The second option is just really strong though. Lose 11 HP to obtain a random relic. It's just good. That's often a price you're willing to pay, and maybe you can divert your pathing to go to another campfire to rest or something, and then you're happy about this. Random relics are just strong. Relics in this game are just kind of good. Can you pay the 11 HP? Sometimes not. So if you're getting completely owned, well, you have the full heal. If you're not getting owned, then you can click the HP, get a random relic, and be pretty happy about it for the most part. Not a whole lot of thinking this event, unfortunately. It's not super interesting. It's just like a thing that's there. Okay, Tinker Time. This is a really interesting event. You have to click this and it gives you the choice of 2. So you can make basically a random card to add to your deck, and there's some customization that can happen that is randomly selected. So once you click this, you'll get 2 options out of the 3 possible ones, which say attack, skill, or power. So you click most of the time probably power or skill. If we look at the attack options, it's always 1 energy deal 12, but has a side effect that you can also get that says whenever you play a card this turn, the enemy loses 6 HP, which is not something you want here. Sapping is by far the best one that says apply 2 weak, apply 2 vulnerable, just like a sort of mini shockwave. Violence says hits 2 additional times, not very relevant. So one of these is good, the rest are kind of bad. I almost never want to click attack here. Skills, for the most part, are just really good. Chaos says adds a random card into your hand and it causes 0 energy. Very solid. Can randomly bail you out, especially against a new door. Energize, gain 2 energy, which notably is energy positive, so can create infinites. Or Wisdom, draw 3 cards. You always get a card that says 1 energy, gain 8 block, and do something crazy, which is just like always good. I think for the most part, the skill is maybe the best. Power, if you just want a card that just exhausts out of your deck and never bricks you, I guess it can do something because they can be really broken, especially the third one. Curious says powers cost 1 less energy, oftentimes not relevant, just gets out of your deck. Expertise says gain 2 strength, 2 dex, which is like a combination of footwork and flame. Very, very strong for the end game. I think this is probably one of the biggest high rolls you can get. Just kind of bails you out of a lot of boss scaling issues, which if you're going into Act 3 boss gauntlet, which you are after this is the best time to see it, kind of. You can just get a lot of random scaling out of nowhere. Really, really sick. Improvement says at the end of combat, upgrade a random card. This can be really good or can be really useless. I think for the most part, the skill can never break. Power has the chance to really high roll, depending on the situation. Maybe if 2 or 3 of those options are good for you, I would click power, but I'm almost never clicking attack here. I think it's the better of skill or power, and for the most part, you get skill. But yeah, just crazy, crazy effects. They're really, really strong. I like this event a lot. It's pretty cool. It can sometimes just brick you. All of these upgrades for attack, power, and skills will all upgrade to, say, innate. That's it. I've only really had energized and never felt the need to upgrade it. I've gotten that quite a bit. I've gotten energized like 2 or 3 times, and I've gotten expertise once, I think. Again, when there's this many options and you don't see this event every run, it's not likely you're going to see every single option, especially, I think I have like 130 hours of playtime right now, and I've only seen this like 3 or 4 times. So again, events you don't see all the time, but when you do see them and they're, very strong, it's a cool thing to have. The trial, 2 options here, but it's very fake. It just says you are not allowed to reject, and they really mean that. It brings you to a forfeit screen if you try to do it. So a bit of a funny thing. After you click accept on the trial, you're going to be given one of 3 different screens. You'll have the merchant screen, the noble screen, or the nondescript scene. And all of these have 2 options on them. So you'll have guilty or innocent for all of them. However, depending on which screen you see, you're going to have different options here. But you'll always see these 2 pairings together. So for merchant, you can have regret for 2 random relics, or innocent to add shame to upgrade 2 cards. And these are targeted upgrades. Overall, I think the 2 random relics are strong, like very, very strong, and worth having the worst curse for your deck. Hopefully you'll have a way to remove this curse, but overall I'm not super happy to see this. I think at this point I just don't want the curses at all most of the time, but if I have to, I'll take the relics. For noble, you can heal 10. This is the only option in the entire event that allows you to just leave without a downside. Everything else comes with a curse. Regret to your deck for 300 gold is the innocent option here. Unfortunately, there's no Act 4 store yet, so this often can do literally nothing. However, it does come against a completely free option. So if the bottom one's not doing anything for you and you know that you're not going to be able to make use of the gold, very easy to decide to just take the heal here. If you can make use of the gold and you're not having a super small deck thing that relies on maximum removes, probably better just to take the gold and actually do something with it. 300 is a lot, and relics are cheaper on the beta branch now. Okay, nondescript says, add doubt to your deck to gain 2 card rewards, or add doubt to your deck to transform 2 cards. I think in general, transforms are just going to be stronger here. If you're specifically fishing for very key pieces, certain things, the top option is going to be better for you here. For the most part, you can sort of count transforms as just removes as well, and you're probably going to have some crap cards, basics or whatever, to get rid of here that you're happy to see go. Okay, shared events. Some of them are only acts 1 and 2. Some of them are only acts 2 and 3. I don't think there's any that are 1 and 3. One is both act 1s. These can pop up at any point inside of the run for the most part. And I think, I'm not sure if it works the way in Inspire 1. I have not had it happen yet where I see the same event twice. That can happen in Inspire 1, but I feel like they probably removed it. I've just not had it happen. Again, sample size is just not big enough to know whether or not you can see these multiple times, and maybe someone knows. For the most part, that's not very relevant information. Okay, Brain Leech. This event I've seen mostly inside of Act 1. First option says choose 1 of 5 random cards to add to your deck, and option 2 says lose 5 HP, gain a colorless card reward. For the most part, I want to click the colorless card reward. The top option cannot be skipped. So if you see 5 bricks here, you get owned and you have to add something to your deck, which is not a great feeling. Again, if you can't afford the 5 HP, although I don't really know in what situation you can't, 5 HP is like a very low price to pay, and colorless cards are usually really good in this game, especially getting a card reward. Like even seeing colorless from Niao, I think for the most part inside of Act 1, Zeknar calculated it's a roughly around 3% chance to brick, which makes seeing 3 card rewards probably around a 1% chance to brick, or something like that. Yeah, it's not very high that you're going to get nothing out of the colorless card reward. You're going to see something you want, especially inside of Act 1. So I'm oftentimes just clicking option 2 here and not really considering option 1 unless my HP is super tenuous. Okay, Crystal Sphere. Option 1 is pay 56 gold, divine 3 times. Option 2 is gain a debt, divine 6 times. This brings you to a kind of mini game that can have like gold and relics and curses in it. And you sort of click randomly across the grid until you get revealed options, basically. Notably, if you click the top option, you cannot get the relic. It is impossible to actually get the relic, even if you know exactly where it is, which you cannot. It is almost fun. I agree with that. I really don't like this. I think most of the time this is just robbing you. I'm clicking option 1 and just being sad I'm poor. You can sort of make your money back, but you do have to be careful of clicking on a curse. So I'm oftentimes just not clicking a full divination at the beginning, just so I can see sort of what's around. I'll get gold, and know that you cannot get the relic, so do not try to get the chest out of the first option if you click it. But yeah, you just click option 1 and just try not to get owned. That's kind of what it is. It feels like choose a card in Inspire 1, which is not super interesting and oftentimes just destroys you. I'll move on here to the fake merchant events. This is a really funny event where a merchant shows up with kind of bootleg versions of relics for a lot cheaper. These cost like 1/3 the price of regular relics and are roughly around that efficiency. They're a little bit better than that. So it's a pretty small pool of options. You have 10 and you see, it looks like 6 on the screen. Some of these are better than others, though. The value that you get out of some of them are just a much better. I think probably the number one best one is Anchor, which just says start each combat with 4 block. That's a pretty big number. And if you're only paying roughly 50 gold for this, that is just really, really solid output. If you're like going right into a shop after this, maybe you want to save your money for real relics. But yeah, Anchor I think overall is pretty solid. Blood Vial can also be interesting. It says at the start of each combat, heal 1 HP. That can just be, 5, 10 HP over the course of the rest of the run. I believe this is Act 2 and 3. I don't think I've seen this inside of Act 1. But again, I don't know. It's just I don't often click a whole lot of stuff here. I think Anchor is definitely the best one. Happy Flower is interesting. Instead of every 3 turns, it says every 5 turns gain 1 energy, and that's a very strong one as well. Waffle also heals for 10% of your max HP, which is not super big. Often this is like 6 or 7 HP. Not super great. Mango says raise your max HP by 3, also usually not worth it. Orichalcum, if you end your turn without block, gain 3 block, way worse than normal. 3 is just meeting a lot less thresholds and means you end up wanting to play defend over this. Not very good. Snecko Eye, I've literally never clicked this. I don't know what kind of deck you can build to make this work. You start each combat confused without the additional draw 2 effect of the real Snecko Eye. So probably almost never click. I don't know in what world I'm gonna actually want to click that. Strike Dummy, cards containing strike deal 1 additional damage. Pretty irrelevant most of the time. Venerable T-Set, whenever you enter rest site, start the next combat with an additional energy. This can be good, especially if you have something like Bread, or you have the relic that, like the boss relic that converts leftover energy into 2 additional energy the next turn. I like it a lot with that. Oftentimes, you're not going to see that together. It's not something you click very often. Merchant's Rug Permutation does nothing. Yeah, so there's like 3 options you click here pretty frequently. They're funny, and I like this event. I think it's really cute, but usually not a very strong thing to be spending gold on. There's just better options. Notably cannot remove here either. Okay, Potion Courier. Option 1, procure 3 foul potions. Option 2, procure 1 random uncommon potion. You can throw these foul potions at a merchant to get 100 gold, or deal 12 damage to everyone, which includes you. I should mention the fighting the fake merchant. Yeah, if you have foul potions and throw them at the fake merchant, you can fight him for everything by throwing at him. You get, like, I think gold and all of his relics, I want to say. The problem with option 1 is that you only have 2 potion slots on High Ascension, unless you have Potion Belt or a boss relic. So oftentimes you're losing a potion on the ground. If you have a bunch of potion slots, you can do some funny stuff with this, but oftentimes you just don't have it. Option 2 gets clicked if you have like no store, you have potions that like you actually care about, like a potion, or you have immediate fights incoming. Like oftentimes you really cannot afford to throw your potions on the ground for foul potions that don't do anything. But yeah, I think it's pretty obvious when you can take this or not. If you have a shop incoming right away, you can just take the foul potion, throw them, and buy your potions back or something. It's really hard to get full value out of this. I have had it happen with Potion Belt, but yeah, it doesn't happen very often. I think both of these are clickable. I like this event. This is very interesting. But the question is really just, do you have a shop incoming? And can you afford to lose the potions that you have currently? Okay, Ranwood the Elder. Throwback to Ranwood from game 1. You have to give up something here. So you can give a potion, an amount of gold, 100 gold, or a relic to get random relics.
The relic will just spawn into your relic bar. You can't say no to it, but Spire 2 doesn't really have as many things that are bad in your relic bar. Like Spire 1 had maybe Dead Branch and Pyramid together that were non-bows that you didn't want. So do think about it a little bit. If there's like a very specific relic that's going to completely break your deck, then you might want to avoid this.
So it's really just what do you want to give up. Obviously, if he asks for a bad relic, getting 2 random relics is just best value here. So that's probably the first thing to evaluate, and the second is probably the potion, and the last thing you want to give up is probably the gold. But just depends on the run. Relics are just strong. Overall, a good event. It does force you to give something up, which can own you completely. Not awesome when you see that. Yeah, worth mentioning that if you ask for a relic that does something upon pickup, like Potion Belt, it says on pickup gain 2 slots. You do not lose the slots if you lose the relic. So if you get like Old Coin or whatever, like War Paints, Whetstone, that only do something once, he can ask for that or Wax Relics, and you basically get 2 relics for free. So yeah, can sort of own you when you don't want to lose anything. If it acts 3 good options, you're very sad. But for the most part, oftentimes you have something you can give up here, and it doesn't hurt too bad. Getting random relics are just good. Relic Trader. This is sort of similar, but it just swaps random relics in your relic bar for other random relics. It does give you more options and tells you which relic you're going to get. This can own you. I've had runs where this takes like 3 good relics out of my relic bar and gives me 3 relics that are duds, and you kind of have to pick between the worst one. Obviously, extremely run dependent. Like they're all basically the same option and just randomized. So pick your worst relic, or maybe the relic that has the highest ceiling on the other end that he's going to give you. Yeah, completely run dependent. I really can't mention much here. There's not a whole lot to think about. It's just, what's in your belt. Okay, room full of cheese. I really hate this event. The first option says choose 2 of 8 random common cards to add to your deck. You cannot skip these. So you can get destroyed. Certain characters' common pools are much better than others. So you can be very sad here. I've had this completely brick. And they definitely just nerfed a lot of the good commons, like Glow got nerfed off of Regens, Defy got nerfed from Necro. So I find myself wanting to click this less option, but Chosen Cheese is just not a good relic. It gives you 1 max HP at the end of combat, but you have to pay 14 upfront to do it. Inside of Act 1, that is often not a cost I'm willing to pay, so I'm just gambling. And so for the most part, I really hate this. If you're ahead of the curve, you click the bottom option just to not get destroyed. It feels pretty bad. Oh yeah, worth noting Silver Crucible high roll. So if you have Silver Crucible from now and see this, all the commons are upgraded. And then this event's really good. So there is a high roll potential, but for the most part, I'm really sad when I see this. But yeah, option 2 can straight up kill you. If it doesn't kill you, or it's not going to kill you, I should say, I probably click that. If you see this like literally floor 2, that's probably the best time to see commons and when they're going to be the best. If you see this later in the act or inside of Act 2, you're not happy to click the top option almost ever. So yeah, better the earlier you see this for sure, because I can click option 1 and not lose HP. Oftentimes clicking bottom 2, it just doesn't feel very good. Self-help book. I love this event. I think this is really cool. You basically get to enchant an attack, skill, or power. They all do different things. The attack enchant increases the card's damage by 2. The skill enchant increases the block from a card, and it does have to have block on the card. You cannot enchant any skill with this to increase by 2 block. And Swift 2 says a power. Whenever you play this card, draw 2 cards. This event's really cool. I think for the most part, super early on, the block enchant is often going to be the best, and you usually don't have a power to enchant. If you have something that multi-attacks, however, the sharp enchant is really sick. And oftentimes, like, I'm enchanting something or picking cards up because they say multi-hits, just to open up some of these enchantments that are really broken. If you have a power, I'm almost always clicking draw 2. I think usually I just don't have a power if I see this early, which is the unfortunate part. But for the most part, that is just the best one. If you have a power, draw 2 on it is really cool, unless it's like something like Void Form or something that ends your turn, or costs all your energy, like Echo Form can draw you into something you didn't want to draw into. If you have like a 1-cost power, it just turns your 1-cost power into a draw card. It's super sick that you want to be playing anyways. So yeah, really interesting event. There's a lot of interesting decisions to be made here. Can do some very breakable things, and chants are just really cool. I like them a lot. Okay. Slippery Bridge. I've clicked this and like basically died from it. Option 2, basically randomizes the card that is in option 1, and option 1 just says remove that card. So if you hate the card that is randomly selected to remove, you click option 2 to re-roll it. This can just sort of put you into a loop where you only get good cards and have to remove them. I would not greed to specifically remove Strike, for example, in this event. If you get a defend or anything that is worth removing, just stop. Like, this is just gambler's fallacy in a nutshell. This event will kind of force you to own yourself if you try to high roll it. I think you really just decide on the least acceptable remove in your entire deck and find the threshold where you're willing to just stop and remove as soon as you get it. You will get owned for the most part, so you cannot stay here for a very long time. It's just a really awful event. I think it really owns you, and you can just keep rolling all your good cards and you'll be really sad. I think this is all 3 acts, unfortunately. So this is a really common one. I see this event a lot, and don't like it. And yeah, the HP damage scales. I think it goes up by 1 every time you click it. So it progressively gets worse and worse to see. Not my favorite thing ever. Stone of all time. This is very sick. So option 1 says lose a potion on your pelt, and I think this is randomized. And then you gain 10 max. That's a really strong thing on its own. This basically says get a pair for a potion, which is a lot of gold value. And option 2 says lose 6 HP, enchanted attack with Vigorous 8, which is the same buff as Akabeko, except you can not lose it by playing other attacks. So if you have a multi-hit attack, let's say like a Dagger Spray or Eradicate on Necro or something, that can abuse this enchant. Radiate also really strong. Flechettes as well. Yeah, just crazy amounts of damage here. If you, yeah, AoE as well. 7 stars. Drill. There's so many things. And again, this is why I think a lot of drafting in early game, sometimes you just pick a card. If you see any card that can be remotely breakable with enchants early and it's like not a bad card to pick, I'll sometimes value that over some other stuff just because there's so many events that add enchants that just break the card entirely. Anger is cool too. Yeah, there's just so many things that just get so broken with enchants. So most of the time this event's just really good. It can cost you a really good potion, and 10 HP can be worse than a potion, especially short term. I think long term you're almost always happy to have the top option, but this can be really scary if like you're walking into a fight with low HP and you don't have anything good to enchant, and you also can't give up your potion because it's really important to not dying. But overall, this event's really powerful, especially if the bottom option is breakable, which it often is. Symbiote. Option 1 is enchanted attack with Corrupted, which says deals 50% more damage but lose 2 HP. I think this is a lot better on something like Bludgeon. That's a huge attack that you only play a handful of times versus just a really valuable attack that you're playing very often, because losing 2 HP is not nothing. Bludgeon often will just end the fight on repeat. Like every time you play it, you get out of the fight. And if I'm paying only 2 HP to get out, then that's a lot. So can be really good. I think most of the time I'm clicking option 2 just because transforms are so good. Oh yeah, Scythe is really cool with this. But yeah, most of the time I'm usually clicking option 2, I find. I usually don't want to pay for the corrupted cost, but it can be quite strong. Transforms are just really good in this game, like even better than Spire 1 levels of good. P-Box is less common. That was a main downside for transforming. Also, just the way combos work in this game is a really big upside for transform. So you're not really ever unhappy here. I think you're always happy with the transform. Just a really good event to see in general. Okay, T-Master. Speaking of really good events, this is not one of them. This is like probably one of the worst in the game. Basically, all these options are negative. Option 1 says pay 50 gold at the start of the next combat, upgrade your starting hand. I don't usually want to pay 50 gold for 1 fight's worth of value. I also don't want option 2, which says 150 gold at the start of next 5 combats, gain 2 strength, which oftentimes does nothing. This can be really brutal. And if you want to skip, then it shuffles 2 days into your draw pile in the next combat. So even the get out of here option is negative in the next fight. It's going to cost you life instead of gold. This guy really feels like I'm always clicking option 3 if I can. And sometimes paying option 1 if I'm really worried about dying and just don't want to be poor or something. I don't know. This guy just scams you. I think all these options are bad. You just kind of have to figure out the least bad. I almost never click option 2 though. It's between option 1 and 3 most of the time for me. I really don't know when you're clicking option 2. Maybe you're like walking into the act 2 boss and dying and need something. It's just weird. It's just, most of these are just not worth paying for. It's just, if you're walking into an elite, you really don't want to be clicking 2 dazes in your draw pile. But yeah, he'll scam you. Just try to get out with the least amount of punish, basically. Just not great. And this is something that can also appear inside of Act 2. Again, why I feel like Act 2 events are actually kind of the worst in this game. In Spire 1, it felt like Act 2 events were the best. And in this game, it feels like very much the opposite. Okay, Future of Potions. This is lose a potion to obtain a card reward screen that's all upgraded. So this, I think, picks between the 2 options you have in your potion belt. If you only have 1 potion, you only get 1 option. It's not oftentimes awesome. Losing potions can be a really big downside, but you know, upgraded skills are good. If you can get owned, then well, it sucks. And the upgraded cards scale with regards to the potion rarity that you're giving up. So if you give up a rare potion, you get rare card rewards. So it can high roll, but not awesome. And also, yeah, apparently it can show up with 3 options with Potion Belt or Low Ascension to give you kind of just options of what to discard. You can skip the card, so it doesn't get like super sad, but losing a potion to get nothing doesn't feel good. But yeah, upgraded cards are generally strong. It's just, there's a potential to low roll here. For the most part, you're pretty happy with this event, I think, but you can just get completely destroyed and be very sad. Okay, the legends were true. Option 1, nab the map. Receive the spoils map. This is basically a curse that says inside of Act 2, I believe. I don't think you can see this event inside of Act 2. I think it's only Act 1, but both Act 1s. You mark the middle of the map, basically, the chest, and you just get a big amount of gold. You get 600. I have never really clicked this ever since the game released. I clicked this like once or twice to see what it did and decided it was decidedly awful. So I think you're almost always paying the 8 HP. It will kill you. Yeah, both of these can kill you. But 1 potion often pays for 8 HP, which makes that feel a lot more worth it. Especially if you see this inside of Act 1. I just want my potion to not get destroyed. It's really hard to click Spoils Map unless you see this super late inside of Act 1 and you're like really strong. Oftentimes you cannot click this, or it's very hard to justify doing so. Having a curse in your deck for probably the better part of an entire act's worth of fights, like 16, 17 fights, is just not worth it. And yeah, you're carrying a brick through the hardest act in the game, and it just doesn't feel very good. Okay, this or that. Option 1 says lose 6 HP, gain 66 gold. Option 2 says add clumsy, obtain a random relic. I think 90% of the time, I'm clicking option 2. Clumsy is one of the best curses, if not the best curse. I think you can't decidedly say it is anymore, since there's one that retains and could interact with, like, I don't know, things that exhaust stuff in your hand or whatever, like Second Wind. But Clumsy is a curse that gets out of the way, and you will often remove Strike before removing Clumsy, most of the time. So getting a random relic for essentially -1 draw on your first deck cycle is almost always going to be worth it. If you are very winning here and just want remove money, you can take option 1, but for the vast majority of runs, I think you're just slamming option 2 here without very much thought. The clumsy, I really just want to reiterate, is not as bad as people think. I think curse tolerance is something you should definitely think about, and most characters have an amount of brick tolerance that they can carry, especially one as little significance as this one. So yeah, 90% clumsy for random relic here. Not always, but most of the time. War Historian Reppy. This is the special event that you get when you have the Lantern Key. You are giving up your Lantern Key to unlock the chest, or cage, I guess, and get History Course. Surely you're never clicking option 2. History Course is just so freaking broken. If you've carried History Course to this point, you probably knew it was good for your deck and you knew it was going to be broken. Just click option 1. That relic is really silly. It's worth more than 2 random relics. It's like boss relics level of powerful. I've never clicked option 2. yeah, just click option 1 here. We don't need to talk very much about this. Okay, I believe this is the last one. Welcome to Wongos. He gives you 4 different options here. They cost varying amounts of gold, or you can leave by downgrading a card. So this is something that, again, sort of robs you of gold oftentimes. However, this one is a lot better than the other. So option 1 is 1 random common relic for 100 gold, which is very worth it. And option 2 is any rarity of relic, but it tells you what it is for 200. So if you know this relic is very good and worth 200, just pay for it. Option 3 is 3 random relics for 300 gold after 5 combats. So this is obviously the highest value one for the most part. Can be any rarity as well, so not just commons, but is a lot of money and is delayed. So I'm oftentimes not clicking this. I think I don't really want to lose that much gold unless I just have no stores in the act and I can't use it. But if I have this much gold, I'm probably pathing to a shop is the problem. So this guy can sort of just scam you. And if you don't have a very variable path and have to go to the store, you oftentimes don't want to get owned and you'll just have to click option 1. Although common relic is just not bad to click most of the time. You're pretty happy to do that. If you have like important gold thresholds, you can consider something else. Option 4 is downgrade a random card, which is very bad, as we previously discussed about random downgrades. Oftentimes I'm not clicking that ever. It's just option 1 versus like, I'd say option 1 is probably 70% of the time, and then the others are just split depending on how strong they are in your run. I think option 3 is probably the least clicked. Option 2 gets clicked pretty frequently. Okay, that is every event in the game so far. There's a lot, and you're not going to see these very frequently, as I mentioned before. So you oftentimes will have kind of varying things depending on your run. That's what makes Spire a good game, is you're going to have to make decisions. You don't always just slam 1 or 2 options and never think about the other thing. There is a few events that do that. For the most part, I think they did a much better job in Spire 2 with actually making it worth it to click different options at events. I do think it's important that there are bad events that you're scared to see. I don't know if I love the bad events that are currently in the game. I feel like the force cards into your deck style of bad thing is not something I love, especially an event where all the options are bad and you can't even situationally have it be really good. It feels like there's a lot more of those in this game so far. Overall, I like events. I think Act 2 is probably the worst event pool out of all of them. But Act 1, honestly, they feel a lot better. Like just a lot more random transforms or heals or things that like don't completely destroy you. Whereas in the first game, events in Act 1 were just really rough. And I do think events in Act 1 are the most important, since that is the time of the game where it's most important to not get completely destroyed by bad RNG. In Spire in general, I would say with good play, you should basically never be blaming RNG like 99% of the time. You can win like almost every single run if you play perfectly. Obviously, we're not playing perfectly. I don't think anyone is, but I would never really blame the game for me dying. I just do think that like variance inside of Act 1 is the time where it feels the worst, and for the most part, they lowered the amount of that. So overall, kind of happy with changes to events. I'm still unhappy to see certain stuff, but I do think that's a necessary evil for the game. And it does mean that inside of Act 2, I'm often thinking about, can I take all the hallways and live? And, you know, inside of Act 1, build a good deck for Act 2. Like, build a deck that does well inside of Act 2 hallways. So that is something to think about. Build good decks inside of Act 1, specifically for Act 2 hallways, to be able to take them and dodge the Act 2 events is so far my take. Oftentimes it feels like that's going to give you the best answers, and the Ancient inside of Act 2 is going to give you a very big power boost to be able to do it. It doesn't feel like Act 2 hallways are really killing me very frequently with good play right now. I don't feel like I'm really dying for doing that, so it feels like that is sort of something to basically point towards as a good strategy. We can talk about that more in a pathing guide that I will be making very, very soon after releasing this. So yeah, thanks for watching, guys. If you'd like to catch this live ever, I am streaming pretty much every time I do something similar to this or tier listing. So follow on YouTube, subscribe on YouTube, whatever, follow on Twitch, and turn your notifications on to not miss these things.